Hello friends, I am glad to see you again. Today I will tell you about the HOA that gave me 72 hours to build a bridge. Owning a tiny private island sounds glamorous until your neighborhood committee decides it belongs to them. I'm not exaggerating. I bought a lake house with a deeded island a few years ago, not shared use. Not easement. The island lot has its own parcel number, its own property taxes, its own legal description. My name is the only one on it, and my homeowners association still somehow convinced themselves they could give me a written ultimatum: build a bridge from my private island to their community beach within 72 hours. So everyone, and I quote, could enjoy the gazebos without the burden of boat access. That sentence is burned into my brain. To make sense of how ridiculous this got, I need to rewind a little. My name is Jonah. I'm in my mid-30s, work remotely in IT, and grew up in a cramped townhouse above a loud restaurant. My only real dream as a kid was to someday live somewhere quiet, where I could see water from my window. Fast forward a couple decades, some lucky breaks, way too much overtime, and a burned-out version of me started scrolling listings in random lake communities. I stumbled onto a weird one, a house on a man-made lake inside a gated subdivision. The thing that made it special was a little oval of land in the middle of the water. House comes with deeded private island, the listing said, like it was nothing. When I toured the place, the real estate agent, a yawning guy named Cal, took me out to the backyard. The lot gently sloped down to the waterline. Across maybe 100 feet of water sat this tiny, tree-covered hump of land with a rickety old dock and a weathered gazebo. That's all part of the property, Cal said, like he was telling me the fridge was included. Current owner hasn't done much with it, but taxes show a separate parcel. 2 properties for the price of 1, you know? I probably should have asked more questions about the homeowners association right then. Instead, I was too busy imagining coffee on that island at sunrise, maybe a hammock between the trees, a little grill. The survey showed the island boundaries clearly. The title report said no easements, no encroachments, no shared access rights. The HOA covenants specifically listed lakefront lots may include deeded island parcels, which remain private property of the lot owner. I read that line 3 times. I closed on the place 2 months later. The homeowners association looked normal at first glance. Monthly dues, a pool, some tennis courts, a small beach area with a dock, and a sign that said community swim area. The rules packet was thick, but mostly what you expect. No bright purple houses, no junk cars on blocks, keep your grass under 8 inches. There were sections about watercraft and lake safety, but nothing about my island beyond that little line confirming it was private. Year 1 was peaceful. I bought a modest pontoon boat, fixed up the old dock on the island with pressure-treated lumber, and replaced the broken gazebo with 2 new ones, one open-sided for shade and one screened in for bug-free evenings. I pulled permits from the county for the structures, had the footings inspected, everything done by the book. I even invited neighbors a few times. People thought it was cool that I had the island, but no one acted weird about it. You needed a boat or a good kayak to get out there, so it naturally limited how many folks showed up. We'd have maybe a dozen people, some hot dogs, music at reasonable volume, and everyone would be off the water by 10. The trouble didn't start until the HOA board changed. Our original HOA president was a laid-back retired guy named Owen, who cared mostly about keeping the pool filters working. He moved to be closer to his grandkids, and the board elections that followed apparently dragged every wannabe petty tyrant within 10 miles out of hiding. The new president was a woman named Trista. Short, razor-sharp bob haircut, permanent fake smile. The kind of person who introduces herself with her title. I'm Trista. I'm the president of the association. She came to my door 2 weeks after she got elected, flanked by 2 other board members, an older guy named Cliff who wore polo shirts tucked into sweatpants, and a younger woman named Janelle who took notes on everything like this was a criminal investigation. I invited them in, but they declined and stayed on my porch like I was the problem they were here to fix. We're doing a review of unique properties in the community, Trista said, eyes flicking past me toward the lake. We want to make sure everything is aligned with our vision. I raised an eyebrow. Unique properties? The island, she said, like I'd been caught hiding a tiger in the garage. I explained what the previous board had told me during the buying process and what the covenant said, that the island was a separate parcel, privately owned. Trista smiled wider. Of course. We're not taking anything away from you. We just want to make sure all amenities are used in a way that benefits the whole neighborhood. Amenities? I repeated. The gazebos, the dock, she said. They're substantial structures that visually impact the community. They're what we would call exclusive use amenities. That I paid for, I said, on my land. There was a little silence while she kept smiling. Cliff shifted his weight. We'll be in touch, she finally said. We're focusing on making the lake experience more equitable. That word, equitable, felt weird in her mouth. It wasn't about fairness. It was about access to something she'd already decided wasn't really mine. The first letter came a week later. It was on HOA letterhead. Courtesy notice stamped across the top like I should be grateful. It said the gazebos and dock on my island may not have been properly approved by the Architectural Review Committee and asked me to submit retroactive plans, including materials, dimensions, and usage intentions. Usage intentions? I sighed and called the county building department just to triple check. Yes, my permits were valid. No, the HOA couldn't undo county approvals. Yes, they had seen island structures on private parcels before. No, they wouldn't get involved in HOA drama. So I filled out the architectural forms. I attached the stamped permits, inspection reports, and a copy of the covenants section that said island parcels were private. For usage intentions, I literally wrote, personal enjoyment. Occasional small gatherings of friends and neighbors. Max 20 people, quiet hours respected. No rentals or commercial use. I dropped the packet at the HOA office and thought that would be the end of it. It wasn't. Instead of an approval or even questions, they sent another letter. This one said that because my gazebos and dock were visible from common areas and impact community aesthetics, they were considered amenity-adjacent structures. And because our covenants discouraged private amenities that exclude other members, the board was reviewing options to ensure fair use of the lake features. I read it 3 times and then said out loud to my empty kitchen, "What does that even mean?" I asked around. A couple of longtime neighbors told me Trista had run on a platform of unlocking community potential, which sounded harmless until you realized she literally meant unlocking anything she thought was too nice to be privately owned. She'd already started trying to force people with larger backyards bordering the path to allow a permanent footpath extension so the walking trail could be more scenic. She'd pushed to convert an undeveloped strip behind the tennis courts into a community garden without asking the few people whose yards backed directly onto it. Basically, she saw anything within the fence line of the subdivision as fair game as long as she could spin it as for everyone. She just hadn't bumped into someone who read contracts for fun, apparently. I dug out my giant folder of closing documents and read the covenants line by line. There was a whole section on the lake. The water itself was common. The HOA owned the lake bed except where lots extended into it. They controlled docks attached to the shoreline. They had rules about motors, speed limits, noise, but there it was, in black and white. Where a lot includes a separate deeded island parcel, exclusive use of said parcel shall remain with the lot owner, subject only to applicable laws and governmental regulations. Exclusive use, not restricted use, not shared access, exclusive. So I sent an email to the entire board. I attached a PDF of the relevant pages, highlighted. I was polite but direct. Hi all, I've reviewed the covenants and my deed. As you can see in section number, the island parcel is my private property with exclusive use. The gazebos were permitted and inspected by the county. I'm happy to continue being a good neighbor and inviting people occasionally, but there is no legal basis for the HOA to treat the island as a community amenity. Please confirm that any review of my personal structures has been closed. No response for 5 days. Then I got an email from Janelle, the note-taking board member, that said, "The board has received your message and is discussing options with our attorney." Okay, I thought. Good, let the attorney tell them what I just did. Maybe this would finally end. Spoiler, it did not end. What came instead after another week was what I now refer to as the ultimatum. It showed up as a printed letter stuck in my front door, certified mail and an email, multiply delivered, like a threat from a bad movie. "Dear Jonah," it started, which I mentally translated as "Dear Problem. After careful review of your island structures, the board has determined that your gazebos are being maintained as exclusive use amenities on a body of water owned by the association. Under Article whatever, Section blah, exclusive use amenities that are only accessible by watercraft create an inequitable burden on other members and may be regulated as such. To remedy this inequity, the board hereby requires you to construct a permanent pedestrian bridge from your private island to the association's community beach area to provide reasonable access for all members to enjoy these amenities. I stopped and actually laughed because it was so absurd. Then I kept reading. This bridge must be constructed at your sole expense, designed to support reasonable foot traffic, and installed in a manner that complies with applicable safety codes. The board is providing you with 72 hours from receipt of this notice to commence installation of said bridge, with substantial completion within 30 days. Failure to comply will result in fines of $250 per day and potential legal action. My laughter died. They were serious. They were actually trying to force me, under HOA rules, to build a permanent bridge from my private island to their public beach so everyone could wander over and use my stuff. Within 72 hours, I had to commence installation, whatever that meant, or they'd start fining me daily. They didn't ask if I wanted to allow people on the island. They didn't ask if a bridge was even legal. They just decided I owed the neighborhood an infrastructure project. There was a packet stapled to the back, a rough drawing of the lake, a red line from my island to the sandy community beach, and a typed note that said, "Bridge must be built in this approximate location to ensure direct access from common area." I sat at my dining table with the letter spread out, my dog Scout snoring under my feet, and tried to wrap my head around how off the rails this had gone. Part of me wanted to march straight down to the HOA office and yell. Another part wanted to ignore it and see what they'd actually do. The wiser part of me picked up my phone and called my attorney. I'm not rich, but I'm cautious. When I bought the house with the island, my real estate agent strongly recommended I have a real estate lawyer read everything. That's how I met Mariah, a soft-spoken but terrifyingly efficient attorney who did nothing but property law and the occasional HOA nightmare. She answered on the second ring. "Hey Jonah, what's up?" I read the relevant parts of the letter to her. She interrupted twice to say, "Wait, what?" Then she asked me to email her a scan. "Okay," she said after reading it. "First, no, they cannot compel you to build a bridge. That would be a taking of your property rights and an improvement on theirs at your expense. Second, there are serious permitting issues with anything that spans water. Third, 72 hours is ridiculous on its face. So I can just ignore it?" I asked. She made a little humming sound. Ignoring an HOA is usually not my first recommendation. They have power to fine and to lien if they're stubborn enough. It may not hold up, but it can still create headaches. Let's not ignore. Let's respond in a way that puts them in the deepest possible hole on record. I like the sound of that. She told me to email her copies of my deed, the covenants, and pictures of the island structures. She'd draft a formal response. In the meantime, she suggested I call the county building department again and ask if any kind of pedestrian bridge over the lake would even be permissible. If the county says no or requires a long permit process, that strengthens your position, she said. And if the HOA tries to push you to violate county regulations, that's a very bad look for them. I called the county. This time I got a guy named Spencer in the engineering department. I read him a very sanitized version of the situation. "My homeowners group is asking me to build a pedestrian bridge from my island to the shore. Is that the kind of thing I can just start in 72 hours, or do I need permits?" The man actually chuckled. "You'd need a lot more than 72 hours, my friend. You're talking about a structure over water, potentially affecting drainage, navigation, safety. You'd need a design by a licensed engineer, environmental review, probably a hearing. And that's if it's even allowed. We don't love permanent structures across the lake because of emergency access." I asked if I could get that in writing. He said he could email me the general guidelines and highlight the parts about permits and timeframes. By that evening, I had his email, Mariah was drafting a response, and I had reread the HOA letter so many times that the words blurred. The part that kept sticking in my head was the phrase, "exclusive use amenities on a body of water owned by the association." They were trying to twist the fact that the HOA owned the lake bed into some kind of entitlement to anything built above it, even if it was on my deeded land. But here's the thing. The covenants already anticipated that scenario. There was a tiny, easily missed subsection under the amenities article. Any structure constructed by an owner that connects or provides direct access between a lot or deeded island parcel and common area shall be considered an owner improvement unless expressly dedicated to the association and accepted in writing by the board, at which time ownership and maintenance obligations shall transfer to the association. I hadn't thought much about that when I first bought the place. Now it glowed in my mind like a neon sign. Any structure that connects my island to their common area is my improvement until they accept it in writing, at which point they own it and they maintain it. They were trying to force me to build a permanent bridge, a big, expensive, liability-ridden structure that would literally, by the rules they were citing, become their responsibility if they ever admitted they wanted it. And they'd given me 72 hours to commence installation, which meant they clearly hadn't thought about permits, engineering, or insurance. I didn't sleep much that night. Not because I was scared, because my brain wouldn't stop running through possibilities. I've always been the kind of person who, when backed into a corner, starts looking not just for the way out, but for the way to make the person who pushed me there regret it. I don't start fights, but I finish them. By the time the sun started turning the lake that weird gray-pink color, I had a half-formed plan that was less ignore the HOA and more very calmly escort them into a legal and financial bear trap of their own design. I just needed a few more puzzle pieces. The next day, I walked down to the community beach like any other resident. A couple of kids were skipping rocks. An older guy was sitting in a camp chair reading a book. The beach itself was a modest curve of sand with a wooden sign that said members only, a volleyball net, and a small open-air pavilion where people could reserve tables for parties. I noticed something I hadn't paid attention to before. The HOA had posted a big banner on the pavilion that read, "Summer on the Island coming soon. Community events, yoga, concerts, and more." There was a logo with a little stylized tree and 2 gazebos. My gazebos. Someone had taken a photo from across the lake, silhouetted the structures, and turned them into a graphic. Underneath, in smaller text, details to be announced. I took a picture with my phone and felt a slow, cold anger settle in my chest. They hadn't just decided the island was a community amenity in theory. They were already advertising events there. They'd assumed their own decision into reality. On my way back home, I ran into my neighbor, an easygoing guy named Deacon who lived 2 houses down. He's the type who knows everyone's business without being nosy, if that makes sense. "You see the banner?" he asked, nodding toward the beach. "Summer on the island, huh? You must be hosting a lot." "Funny thing," I said. "No one asked me." His eyebrows shot up. "Wait, seriously? I figured you were partnering with the board or something." I pulled up the photo on my phone and showed him the banner. "This is the first I've seen of it. Also, they just sent me a letter telling me I have to build a bridge from my island to their beach, so everyone can use my gazebos without the burden of boat access." He swore under his breath, then caught himself. "That's not right, man. Everyone knows that island is yours." "Apparently not everyone," I said. He glanced around like the trees might be listening. "Look, I'm not a lawyer, but my cousin is on a different HOA board across town. They got sued last year because they tried to change access rules to some boat slips that were deeded to specific houses. Cost the association a ton. You might want to talk to someone like that." I told him I already had an attorney involved. Deacon shook his head. "Trista's gotten weird since she got that president spot," he said. "She thinks if it's inside the gate, it's hers to manage. She keeps talking about maximizing assets like we're her personal portfolio." "Good to know," I said. "Hey, random question. You ever been invited to the island?" "Once," he said. "Last fall, that barbecue with the chili cook-off. It was great. No one thought it was some kind of members-only club, just your place. Would you be okay signing something that says that?" I asked. He blinked. "Yeah, sure. Why?" "Just collecting facts," I said. By the time I got back home, Mariah had emailed me a draft response to the HOA. It was 3 pages long and read like someone politely disassembling a piece of machinery while pointing out each of its flaws. She cited the exact covenant language about island parcels being private. She pointed to the section about structures connecting private parcels to common areas, remaining owner improvements unless expressly accepted. She attached the county's email explaining that a bridge would require extensive permitting and could not be commenced within 72 hours legally. And then, in her calm, professional way, she went for the jugular, demanding that Mr. Redacted construct a permanent bridge across the association-owned lake at his sole expense to benefit the association constitutes an attempt to compel an uncompensated improvement to common property. Such a demand is outside the authority granted to the association in the recorded covenants, and, if pursued, may constitute a taking of property rights under, she listed relevant state statutes. She gave them a clear choice: rescind the ultimatum in writing within 10 days, or she would advise me to pursue all available remedies, including injunctive relief, damages, and attorney's fees. She also, at my request, added a paragraph about the Summer on the Island banner. We attached a photo. She wrote, "Additionally, it has come to our attention that the association is advertising Summer on the Island events using images of Mr. Redacted's private structures without his permission and without any agreement granting the association use of his island. This misrepresents the nature of the amenities available to members and exposes the association to potential claims from members who may reasonably rely on such advertising." That part, she said, was less about law and more about making them panic. I signed the letter electronically, and she sent it via certified mail and email to the HOA's official address, copying the entire board. That should have been enough to scare reasonable people into backing down. But Trista and her little empire were not reasonable. 2 days later, instead of a retraction or even a request to talk, I got an email from her that was clearly written by someone who'd skimmed Mariah's letter and then gotten offended rather than educated. "Dear Jonah," she wrote, "we are disappointed by the adversarial tone of your attorney's letter. The board is simply trying to ensure that all residents can enjoy the unique features of our community. We have an obligation to manage amenities fairly. Exclusive use of prominent structures on the lake by one member creates resentment and division. The bridge request is a reasonable accommodation to prevent such division." I paused there because calling a demand that I build them a bridge a reasonable accommodation was wild. "Regarding your claim that the island is entirely private, we believe that because it is located on association-owned water, its use is inherently tied to the association's governance. Our attorney is reviewing this matter. Until then, the board's decision stands. Please treat this email as confirmation that the 72-hour time frame for commencing bridge construction begins as of yesterday's date." Begins as of yesterday's date. They were starting the clock retroactively, and I read that line and something in me just flipped from annoyed to ice cold. If they wanted to play games with timeframes and authority, fine. I could play games with paperwork and consequences. I called Mariah. "They doubled down," I said, "and they've started their 72-hour clock." She was quiet for a beat. "Good," she said. "Good?" I repeated. "Yes," she said, "because now they've put their unreasonable demand in writing twice after being warned. That will look lovely in front of a judge, but I'm guessing you're calling because you're thinking of responding in another way too." She knows me too well. "I'm not going to violate any laws," I said. "I'm not actually going to start pouring concrete into the lake without permits, but they said I have to commence installation of a bridge within 72 hours. Does that phrase have a specific legal meaning? In a construction contract, it usually means mobilizing resources, signing contracts, ordering materials, staking out the work area," she said. "But here, it's just HOA nonsense." "Why?" "Because," I said, looking out at my island, then over to the community beach where the Summer on the Island banner flapped in the breeze. "If they insist I start the bridge, I might just start it in a way that is 100% legal and 100% their problem." There was another small silence. Then Mariah sighed in a way that sounded almost amused. "I'm going to remind you," she said, "not to commit fraud, not to forge signatures, and not to damage common property. But within those bounds, you are allowed to comply with unreasonable rules in very literal ways." "Totally understood," I said. "Also," she added, "document everything: photos, emails, times, witnesses. If you end up in court or in front of a mediator, the more you can show that you tried to be reasonable and they insisted on absurdity, the better." After we hung up, I took out a notebook and started writing down pieces I already had. HOA demand: build bridge from my island to their beach within 72 hours at my expense for community use. Covenants: island is private, exclusive use. Any connecting structure is owner improvement unless dedicated and accepted by HOA in writing, then HOA owns it and maintains it. County bridge requires permits, engineering, and can't be started in good faith in 72 hours. HOA already advertising Summer on the Island events using my gazebos without permission. HOA president has decided this is about equity and resentment, so backing down will bruise her ego. I added a new line under that. If I start a legal process to build something they demanded, and that process triggers scrutiny and costs for them, I thought about Deacon's cousin's board getting sued over boat slips. I thought about how much HOAs hate unexpected expenses, and how fast neighbors turn on boards that raise dues. I thought about that little clause about structures connecting to common areas being owner improvements until dedicated and accepted. Then I thought about what would happen if, instead of refusing to start the bridge process, I embraced it in the most official, bureaucratic, paper-heavy way possible, while making sure every single document listed the association as a beneficiary or future owner. If they wanted a bridge so badly, I would give them a bridge. Or at least, I would set in motion the kind of bridge that would make them wish they'd never heard the word. I pulled up the county website and started looking up overwater pedestrian structures, easements, and liability for common area improvements. The first thread that caught my eye was about ADA compliance. If a community amenity is open to all residents, and especially if it's advertised as such, many jurisdictions require it to be accessible. Ramps, slopes within certain grades, handrails at certain heights, a simple little arched footbridge with a couple of planks wouldn't cut it. To meet all the accessibility guidelines from a sandy beach to a raised island landing, you'd need long ramps, gentle slopes, landings. It would be massive and expensive, and an insurance headache. I imagined Trista's face when she realized that turning my 2 gazebos into a community amenity meant signing up for ADA standards and the accompanying liability. Then another thought hit me. One of my neighbors, a woman named Kendra, uses a wheelchair. I'd seen her at the pool and mail kiosk. She'd never been to the island, obviously, because you needed a boat and we didn't exactly have accessible docks. If the HOA was serious about everyone accessing my gazebos without the burden of boat access, and they were serious about the island being an amenity, then any half-finished rickety bridge would not only be a code violation, it could be discrimination. I didn't want to use Kendra in my scheme without her consent, but I filed that away as another layer of reality that the HOA hadn't considered. They tended to think in terms of yard signs and pool wristbands, not federal accessibility laws. By the time the second day of their 72-hour clock ticked over, my plan was starting to solidify. I would commence installation by initiating every lawful step required for a legitimate, fully compliant overwater pedestrian access structure between my island and the community beach. I would notify the HOA in writing of each step. I would make sure every form and proposal spelled out, in plain language, that the structure was being designed and permitted as a future common area amenity for the association's benefit, subject to their acceptance and ongoing maintenance. And I would do it all under the umbrella of complying with their demand. If they backed down, great, I'd stop the process and we'd have their retreat in writing. If they didn't, then we'd all get to watch what happened when their fantasy of a cute little bridge collided with the reality of environmental regulations, ADA requirements, insurance, and the wrath of their own members when dues went up to pay for it. I think that was the exact moment the story stopped being, "My HOA is annoying," and became, "They picked the wrong person to bully." I printed out their letter one more time, underlined 72 hours to commence installation, grabbed my keys, and headed out to meet the first person who would unknowingly help me tighten the noose around the board's collective neck. A marine construction contractor who'd done some work on a public park dock nearby and was very, very familiar with how much bridges over water actually cost. I was going to follow their rules, and I was just going to follow them so literally and so loudly that they collapsed under the weight of their own demands. The marine contractor I called was named Avery, and he sounded way too cheerful for someone whose job was basically telling people how much their dreams over water would cost. When I explained what I needed, I kept it very straight. I've been instructed by my neighborhood association to construct a pedestrian bridge from my deeded island to the community beach, I said. I need an ADA-compliant design, fully permitted, engineered, the whole thing. It would serve as pedestrian access from a common area to my island structures, and it may be dedicated to the association as a common amenity once complete. There was a little pause on the line. "You said from your private island to the HOA's beach?" Avery asked. "Correct," I said. "They own the lake bed and the beach. I own the island. They want the bridge. They've set a timeline for me to commence installation. I want to start by getting a professional assessment and design proposal." I could tell he was trying not to be nosy, but this was not a request he got every day. "Well," he said finally, "I'll say up front, bridges over water are not weekend projects, but if you want a site visit and a ballpark estimate, I can come out this week." He showed up the next afternoon in a pickup with his company logo on the side and a rolled-up measuring wheel in the back. He was mid-40s, sun-worn, with that calm, practical demeanor you only get from arguing with inspectors for 20 years. We walked down to my backyard. I pointed out the island, the gazebos, and then gestured over to the community beach area where the Summer on the Island banner still waved like a taunt. "So they want a bridge from here to there?" Avery asked. "They specified approximate location," I said, pulling the HOA's map out of a folder. "From island to beach. They want residents to be able to walk to my gazebos without using boats." He studied the map, then the shoreline, then the distance across the water. "How deep is it there?" he asked. "Varies with the lake level," I said. "Max maybe 12 feet in the middle, tapering up to the island and shore. The county should have exact bathymetry. It's a managed lake." He nodded slowly. "All right, so to do this right, emphasis on right, you're talking about driven pilings or a properly anchored floating structure, ADA slopes because it's an amenity, guardrails, non-slip surface, lighting if it's open after dark, and probably a bunch of environmental and navigation review. Even if there's no motor traffic allowed, they'll want to know about emergency boats, clearance, that sort of thing." "That's what I figured," I said. "Can you give me a preliminary estimate, something I can show my association? And I'd like your proposal to clearly state that this is being designed as a community pedestrian access structure, potentially to be dedicated to the association as the future owner and maintainer." He looked at me, eyes narrowing just a little. "You in some kind of fight with them?" "I'm in some kind of situation with them," I said. "I want everything documented. They've demanded this structure. I'm complying by initiating the professional permitted process. I need it in writing what that actually entails." He shrugged. "Paper's cheap, I can do that." We took measurements from my dock to a line of sight point on the beach. He marked approximate elevations. He took photos from both sides. A couple of homeowners on their decks watched him, curious. I waved. As we walked back up to the house, I asked, "Just ballpark, what range are we talking?" He exhaled through his teeth. "Very rough, not binding, subject to design and permitting. But if you told me I had to build an ADA-compliant pedestrian bridge across this span, I wouldn't even sharpen a pencil for less than $250. Could be $350, maybe more with lighting and contingencies." "Thousands?" I asked, just to make sure I'd heard correctly. He smiled. "Hundreds of thousands." I nodded like I'd expected that all along, even though my insides were doing a small backflip. "Got it. Please put that in your preliminary proposal too. Range, assumptions, contingency line, the works." "No problem," he said. "I'll also include notes on insurance, inspection, and maintenance. Something like this, you don't just build it and walk away." Exactly. By the time Avery left, my commence installation plan was in motion. A marine contractor had just measured the span for the bridge the board demanded, so they couldn't claim I'd blown their 72-hour deadline. 2 days later, he emailed a bridge estimate showing engineered ADA ramps, environmental review, and a total price between $350,000 and $420,000 once permits and professional services were included, plus ongoing inspections, resurfacing, higher insurance, security, and a neat little paragraph explaining that if the island ever became an amenity, the association should be prepared to own the bridge and all liability. I forwarded the estimate to the board, reminded them our covenants say any structure linking private property to common area for community use has to be dedicated to the association, and politely asked them to confirm in writing they'd accept this improvement they demanded. On Mariah's advice, I also filed a county pre-application describing the bridge as requested by the HOA and naming the association as the requesting party, which triggered a polite notice to them about long timelines and high costs and quietly stapled their "build a bridge" fantasy into a government file. By the next monthly meeting, someone had taped the $420,000 figure to the clubhouse bulletin board with "Ask your board why they demanded this" in giant letters, and the room was packed. I read their ultimatum aloud, held up Avery's estimate, and watched faces change while Kendra, in her wheelchair, asked whether they'd actually considered accessibility or just pictured a cute arch from TV. And Deacon reminded everyone the island was my backyard, not a community park. When I added that Mariah was preparing an injunction and their insurance carrier had been notified, the board visibly deflated. A no-confidence vote left 3 hands in the air, and a recall petition started circulating right there. Within weeks, a special election was scheduled, and, under pressure from Mariah, the board issued a written retraction withdrawing the bridge demand, acknowledging my island as private with exclusive use and admitting they had no authority to force improvements to common areas at my expense. As part of a settlement, they reimbursed my legal fees and Avery's preliminary costs, passed a resolution declaring deeded islands private and not association amenities. notified all members, and adopted a rule that any future structural demands had to go through legal review first. The special election finished it. The board that tried to commandeer my island was voted out, and Deacon and Kendra came in with a couple of reasonable people who immediately confirmed there'd be no bridge and no special assessment, quietly replaced summer on the island with a modest summer at the beach, and spent money on the real beach and an accessible ramp from the parking lot to the sand. Avery and I reused his research to upgrade my island dock. No connection to common areas, fully permitted, and the HOA's only response was, "No objection. Owner is acting within deed and covenants." Now the lake is peaceful again. Neighbors paddle by and wave. Sometimes I invite a few people to the island for a cookout, on my terms, by invitation, with a removable ramp for Kendra because she's my friend, not because a board demanded it. The private property access by invitation only, not an association amenity. Signs say enough, and people respect the line now that they've watched a board get burned for crossing it. They tried to force me to build them a bridge. Instead, they paid my lawyer, lost their positions, and turned my headache into a very expensive civics lesson on private property, limits on power, and why you don't mess with someone's island just because you can see their gazebos from your beach. Friends, thank you. See you soon.